I'm Rae Benjamin, and this is the In the Cut podcast, where professional writers come to break down their favorite episodes of TV. Today, we're going to check in with the girls over at Sex and the City.
We in the cut.
Sex and the City is an HBO comedy series created by Darren Star. The iconic show follows friends Carrie, Charlotte, Samantha, and Miranda as they try to find love in New York. It was the first HBO series to win an Emmy for Outstanding Comedy. My Motherboard, Myself is the 8th episode of the 4th season. When Carrie's laptop crashes, she has trouble accepting help from her boyfriend Aiden. Meanwhile, Miranda deals with the death of her mother, and Charlotte and Samantha butt heads on how to console her. Today's episode is brought to you by EMA Members Lounge, a new creative space and social club in Culver City. To join, visit emamembers.com. That's IMA members.com. Thank you to my guest, Ilana Peña, for being here.
Thank you for having me.
She's a creator and showrunner of Diary of a Future President, which was on Disney+. She was a writer on Crazy Ex-Girlfriend, one of my personal all-time favorite shows. And in addition to that, you've written features for Universal, 20th Century, and more, including the Working Girl reboot with Selena Gomez. I'm excited for that one. So thanks for being here.
Thank you for having me.
So before we get started, we're going to play our little game, Fade In, Fade Out. Basically, I'm going to have some rapid fire statements in theme with Sex and the City.
Okay.
If you're here for it, you're going to flip the card, say fade in. If you're not here for it, fade out.
Okay,
let's go. So first one is wearing heels every day, a la Carrie Bradshaw.
Fade out.
I agree. I'm like, Sarah Jessica Parker's feet just must be gnarled claws.
No, I honestly, they've probably Barbied at this point and have formed to the shape of a heel. Do you, Carrie Bradshaw? Not for me. I would be falling down.
Not me. Fade in, fade out. Dating an ex after breaking up with them.
For those listening, I'm doing a half between fade in, fade out. I think it depends.
That's true. I would say in principle, fade out. But
yes.
Have I done it? Fade in.
I think if it depends. In an Aiden situation,
he's a good man.
He was a good man. I'm glad he gave her another chance.
Yeah, she's the villain. We'll talk about that.
Absolutely. But then if you're extremely wronged, don't do it.
Agreed. So thrift store shopping a la Carrie. I say fade in.
Fade in.
I love a thrift store find.
Love it.
I love it too. Buying a bag, the price of your rent.
Fade out. I can't do it.
Me either. I've never done it. No matter how much money I got, I'm just not that person.
I was just in Europe and their bags, some of the brands are cheaper.
Oh, yeah.
I still couldn't do it. Even because it's you save $4,000, but it's on top of
$20,000.
I can't. I just still can't do it. I don't know. I think it would need to be a gift.
Oh, true. We'll get you. You go.
Yeah. To anyone listening, if you'd like to buy me a Fendi bag,
send all offers.
Thank you so much.
Well, and last one, dating like a sugar daddy. Fade in or fade out?
Fade in.
I would say fade out.
Oh, interesting.
I always thought that I wanted this, but
how old are we talking?
Well, when I was younger, I used to work at Equinox, and so there's a lot of rich dudes.
Yeah.
There are a lot of old rich dudes, and I was propositioned a couple times, and I was like, I thought I wanted this in my head, but now that it's staring in front of me, no, please, old man, get away from me.
Okay, old man. I guess I'm gonna reframe. Fade in if you love each other.
Oh, okay. That's true. But if you're just trying to scam.
Yeah. Then it's just find a friend to get you that Fendi bag.
If you're young and hot, but that's a hard trifecta. I feel like it's hot, young, rich.
No, you
all
never.
Three. You can't get all three.
That's sci-fi, baby. That's a whole other podcast.
Okay, I love that. So why did you want to talk about this episode of Sex and the City?
So, Sex and the City, you know, obviously it was a show from a while ago. It has its blind spots, some of which they have attempted to atone for, and then just like that. And some of it is like obviously super outdated, but at the time, what it did, I think, was so meaningful and important, and shining a spotlight on single 30-something women who their most meaningful relationship was with their friends and themselves. And that's huge. And that is something that still resonates. I have seen the show. It's one of those shows I can like quote, like some people quote the Bible. Like I have like a Sex and the City quote for everything. And this episode in particular, I, as a writer, really love writing about and exploring grief. And I think that the show follows a lot of times a very specific formula, and this episode kind of breaks out of that formula in a really interesting way and explores loss and grief in a way that is so singularly the show. And I read, I think a bunch of years ago, there was like a Vulture or some article that ranked every single episode of the entire series. And they put this at number 1, and I was kind of like, oh yeah, that episode. And then I rewatched it and I was like, oh yeah, that episode. I think it's just a really special, meaningful episode, and it was exciting and fun to watch it through the lens of like, you know, nerdy TV writer, which is how I do everything.
Yeah, honestly, I just watched Sex and the City this year. At the top of the year, I'd never watched it, but you know, I was a child when that show came out. In my defense.
No, I didn't watch it live. Yeah.
Yes.
That's what's interesting too. It's like our parents did. Like people talked about it in the water cooler, and like it's so interesting.
And it's really good. I loved it.
Did you like it?
I loved it. I'm like, okay, I get why people like this show. It holds up. But obviously, you know, like
some
you
of
said,
it
there's some outdated things, but do you feel like it's fair to, you know, critique the show through a modern lens, something that happened almost 30 years ago?
You know, I think it is important to acknowledge what is missing, and my therapist is really big on an emphatic and. Two things can be true. And recognize it for what it was. It's like, it's an artifact, right? It's like looking at, me being like, it's like looking at art in the Louvre. But it is. It's like looking at art in a museum, and like that is what that's what it was at the time. I think that we are completely, I do critique it, you know? I think we should, and we should recognize what it is lacking. And if it was made today, I would be like, no, babes, like, no. But that's kind of the beauty of it, because I think the things that writers like you and me want to make today wouldn't maybe be as possible without that setting the stage. So I think it deserves to be critiqued, and it also deserves to be celebrated for what it was.
I 1,000% agree. I really enjoyed the show. And of course, there are some problematic episodes, but hey, it was a problematic time.
Oh, yeah.
And I don't really put my criticisms. I'm just like, oh, wow, you couldn't do that today. Like,
no.
That's basically what I say. And then I laugh and move on. But I really enjoyed the show. I binge watched the whole series. I watched the movies. Then I started with And Just Like That.
It's a whole other conversation.
Yeah, well, you know. I became a fan, and I really understood why it's held up for this many years. Like, the fact that people are still even remembering the show to critique it shows that it is a beautiful piece of art.
That's such a good point. Well, welcome to the fold of fandom.
Yes, I know. I literally was like, I have a lot of theories. I'm like, Carrie is the villain of this show. I don't care what anyone says. I was like, does anyone else feel this way?
Yes.
I was on the internet and like getting in all these message boards. I'm like, okay.
Yeah, we do feel that way.
Yes.
It is so interesting watching. I remember seeing it for the first time at like a sleepover in like 8th grade, and then watching it again in college. And it's like, as I grew up, I would sort of understand Carrie and the other things. Until now in my 30s, I'm just like, oh yeah.
No, I feel like Carrie, you were the problem, girl.
Yeah. And I think, but the show knows that, and I think that's so. Sometimes it knows that but I think what's interesting about it is like she is a problematic main character, and a woman. as the lead of a show, isn't always allowed to be that and do that.
I agree. I feel like that character especially, I think, has laid the blueprint for so many other shows. As someone, like I said, I had never seen the show, but now that I watch it, I'm like, oh, I can see how Insecure exists because of this show, how, Girls exist because of this show. All these other shows exist because of that show, and it's so clear to see. So, problematic Carrie, you've paved the way.
Thank you, problematic Carrie.
So we open the episode with, an iconic girls eating lunch scene. They're the ladies who lunch. They love that. Yep. Carrie reveals that she exchanged keys with Aiden for the first time. It's a big deal. Samantha has her little 1001 sex positions.
Everyone is very themselves in this opening sequence.
Yes, it's just so on point for the show. Carrie goes home and then she sees Aiden is in her house. And, at first she's like, oh, why are you here? But then, they get a little afternoon delight. And it's all
Before
good.
fajitas that he made.
On the George Foreman grill. Talk about artifact.
Talk about product placement. Everything is so what it was. It's also so, just hearing you say it, and I've seen it a million times. I watched it again this morning. It's such a clear on the nose metaphor of like, here, he gave me his key. You know what I mean?
Yes.
Like, and it's so, but what they do with it, I think is really cool. But it literally starts with like, well, I'm in, but like, what does in mean?
I like it. I honestly think the voiceover, everything, the whole format of the show, even though it is a bit on the nose. I sort of like how Carrie's voiceover carries us through all the thematic things that they're exploring that episode. It's very clear, and it makes sense because it goes along with the article she's writing. It's not just random inner thoughts.
Right. And it has a point of view, and it connects, and honestly, it was something I missed in And Just Like That.
Yes, I was so mad. I'm like, they should have just had her have a podcast. Like, that was the clear, like, she went from being a columnist to a podcast. That's what journalists do. Ugh, I have so many thoughts.
I know. Again, another podcast. But it won't be Carrie's.
But so the inciting incident really is Carrie is in the middle of writing her article, and I love what they do with the voiceover. Like, it cuts because her computer crashes. Yep. And, we're off to the races on the story. So one of my favorite things about this show is just how well structured it is. Each character has their own little arc and plot that connects back to the whatever thematic concept they're exploring. And even for an HBO show, it's still very structured. Do you think that comedies nowadays are suffering due to this lack of structure?
That's such a good question. It's funny because as a writer, structure is the thing that doesn't maybe come the easiest to me. I'm always kind of like character and relationships first, and then structure comes from that, which I kind of think is, if you're watching, structure is stemming from characters and XYZ, but I'm a beat sheet is probably where I'm the least excited to be writing. And that show is a masterclass in structure. I don't know though. It's funny because I loved Insecure and I loved Girls and I loved these shows. I still do love these shows that kind of take that structure and make it and say goodbye to it and then don't have it. And I come from playwriting too, and I think that being able to play with form is so necessary and important, and kind of back to like, thank you, Sex and the City, for what you did. It's a little bit like, could Insecure, could Fleabag, could Girls have played with structure if Sex and the City hadn't laid the blueprint for such like clear, regimented structure? So I think I kind of like when things are structureless. Not structureless, like you gotta have something, but I kind of like being on the ride for it. But I think what you have to have is the character and the story and, the through line of that. Like, even in a bottle episode of Girls, even in, episodes that depart from form, you're always tracking the character. So as long as you're doing that, I'm okay with kind of dancing with structure.
Yeah, I think that's good. So less about structure, but more about clear goals, and you're following the character towards something.
Yeah, if you can follow the character, then I'm like less concerned with like, well, that should be an act 2. If you can nail both, that's great. But I also, a reason I got into TV too is just because I was sort of coming of age when Girls and Orange is the New Black and these shows were all kind of like, hey, like, you know what typical TV is? What if we didn't do that? And I think that's really cool too. But you have to, the way Orange is the New Black, for example, did that is the characters were almost like you were following the characters and their goals and their journeys and their emotions. And if you have that, I think you can play.
I'd agree with that. So back to Sex and the City. So Aiden tries to fix a computer, which just enrages Carrie.
He gets so mad at him.
He's so mean, and he's just trying to help. They go to tech support. My favorite line there is, Aiden's tried to do the Control-Alt-Delete. They're like, that only works on a PC. She has a Mac. You're not compatible. Foreshadowing. And I, again, rewatching it today, the glare Carrie gives him at you did Control-Alt-Delete, you're not compatible. She wants him dead. Like, she's like, you messed me up. But yeah, they're not, again, it's so much on the nose, and I'm doing air quotes for the audio listeners, but it works. I just think it's such a couple of sad Macs. Continue. It does work. So then we sort of get all the other characters' stories are introduced. Miranda's mom had a heart attack, so she had to leave to go to Philly. Samantha, in learning this, she suffers her own block. And so, her goal is to get her orgasm back.
She lost her orgasm.
Yes. Miranda's goal is to, get through the grief of her mother who will eventually pass away. And after that, Charlotte, she's in like Martha Stewart mode. She's sort of wrapped up decorating her house, which she loved, and she needs to channel that energy. So she becomes, grief.
The Martha Stewart of grief, I think, is what Carrie called it.
So she's all about trying to make the funeral classy vibes for Miranda. I think in this episode, especially ensemble shows, can just be difficult to write. I had my friend who's a writer on Abbott Elementary be on the podcast, and she was talking about it. You're someone that has, experience working on ensemble shows. What type of planning goes on in a writer's room to sort of track these character stories?
I mean, I think a reason that I watch Sex and the City like a panting little dog is because it shows such a clear, it really concretizes, I think, what shows do maybe in a less on the nose way. So I think thematically, it doesn't have to be as on the nose as Sex and the City, where it's there's episodes of that show where it's are all men freaks, and then everyone is dealing with a freak, and it's what a coincidence, this all happened the same week. But I think that is something that, once you sort of figure out where, if you have a main character or if you have a main sort of plot line that you're following where they're going, I think a conversation in the writer's room is always, A, where do we want this other characters to be going? And B, how can their journeys all kind of be in conversation with each other? And again, it doesn't have to be as on the nose as my mom died, my computer crashed. But it's, what is this episode about with a capital A is a conversation. I always think writers' rooms fall into a trap when you start there. I think you have to start with where the character is going and then let that tell you what the episode's about with a capital A. I've just been burned before being like on my show, we were we're going to write an episode about this Cuban-American girl who doesn't speak Spanish. And we're going to explore that she doesn't speak Spanish. And we tried to break it for days. And the character didn't want to be doing that. That's the only way I can describe it. It was episode 3 of season 2, and she had other things she wanted to be doing. And the kind of story was telling us to go one way, so we ended up putting it in a line over here. But I think once you kind of figure out where the characters are going, then you can be oh my God, it's a story about 3 generations. It's a story about grief and loss. It's a story about all men are freaks. And then having everyone's journeys kind of be in conversation with each other. And also, like, the stories intersect. I think in rewatching it, Charlotte's story is the least fleshed out, probably.
Yes, it's very... Yeah, I would say it's more of a runner than an actual clear arc.
Yeah. But at the end, there's a beautiful shot of her holding Samantha while Samantha's crying. Mm-hmm. And Charlotte, if you're watching the show, has just quit her job to, like, be a wife. And she has complicated feelings about that. To be a wife and a mother. And she has complicated feelings. And that's, I think, why she throws herself into the dimmers. And that's why she throws herself into being the Martha Stewart of the funeral. And then being able to mother Samantha in that moment, being able to comfort her, is sort of like ends her arc in that episode in a really beautiful way. Mm-hmm. And that is like the least fleshed out story. So it's like, and it's nice because Samantha's story and Charlotte's story seem like they're on different planets. But they're both kind of seeking something and they end up together at the end.
They do, and that's what I love about this show. I honestly prefer all the on-the-nose episodes.
Right?
They're just so satisfying.
So satisfying.
Yes, it's so satisfying to watch, and I think that's also why it has stood up the test of time. Yep. I think shows like that are just comforting to watch. Mm-hmm. That's what people want to watch 30 years later. Like, I think of the shows I loved when I was a kid. I loved watching I Love Lucy as a kid. That's because me, my mom, my grandma, we could all watch that show together and we'd all laugh. And I think that classic comedy show should just bring everyone together and... Yeah. Yeah,
I think it's a really good example. I'm sure you experienced this as a writer in this industry of, like, I think a lot of times people think audiences are not very smart, so they really spell things out for them. And I think Sex and the City does a good job of, like, guiding you and holding your hand and not, making you do so much work on your own, but not talking down to you. Mm-hmm. Like, yes, it's on the nose, but it's on the nose they hide it in a joke or a bit or,
It's more like contemplative rather than... instructing you to feel this way. It's more like, this is what I observed and do with it what you will.
Yeah, and like you feel like you're sitting at brunch with these women, not like they're preaching to you.
Exactly. Such a good show. So after all the characters have their sort of goals, we get into the sort of, fun and games of it all. Yep. Samantha, I love that scene where she's wrestling with her latest lover.
Talk about on the nose. She's like, I found a book about 1,001 sexual positions, and now I'm dating the wrestling coach at NYU.
Yes, and he's very flexible, but unfortunately, she's going through a dry spell, and they're trying all her 1,001 positions, and she just can't get there.
She can't get there, and then I love the way that sequence ends when he's like, I gotta pick up my dry cleaning. I gotta go, babe.
And then when Miranda's mother does die, she calls Carrie. Carrie lies about it. She says, Miranda's mom died. Aiden says, when's the funeral? She lies like, I don't know, just because she doesn't want him to come. Honestly, this is my point about Carrie being the villain. Do you agree with that? In this episode, do you think Carrie's behavior is villainous?
I think that having watched all of it, she was never meant to be with Aiden.
I know. But
that is, I think, a little villainous because Aiden is perfect.
Yes, that's what I'm like. You want to go back to Big, who's wildly dismissive, wildly condescending. I feel like Big is everyone's sort of fantasy. Yep. Like, I know I've been this way in my 20s, have crushes on people
all crushed
that
on
are just horrible and dismissive to you, and you're like hanging for any crumb of attention this person
Love Kernels from Crazy Ex-Girlfriends.
It is. It exactly is. But it's like, you don't end up with that person. That, like, what are you telling people, that we should just be dangling and hanging? No.
That is, I think, honestly, my biggest critique of Sex and the City is that she ends up with Big.
Yes.
And I read... Candace Bushnell, who wrote the initial column,
she doesn't like that.
She was like, I think this series should have ended with Carrie running for mayor and Samantha helping her, which is like, I don't know about that.
I know,
but
that doesn't seem Carrie's.
But like the idea of her doing it not being about a man. So I think that Carrie, again, she's like this anti-hero. She's flawed. She is as flawed in a lot of ways as he is. Mm-hmm. I read this, Emily Nussbaum writes reviews, and she has a whole thing about Sex and the City that is incredible. And she calls Big a man practically woven out of red flags.
Yes!
I'm just like...
That's a perfect
literally,
description.
exactly. And it's kind of... I don't know if you're a Gilmore Girls fan, too.
I never watched that. And maybe I need to get into that.
That is another show where you watch Rory get into these situations with these guys, and you're like, girl. But the show is kind of like, yeah, but like, everyone kind of makes these mistakes. We're going to have this character make these mistakes, and like, that's life, baby. And I think that the show is saying she is flawed, Big is flawed. They end up together. I think Aiden deserves better.
I agree, but I need to still watch the last season of And Just Like That, so I don't know what happened. Oh, no.
You gotta text me when you're doing that.
Okay.
I got thoughts.
So, Charlotte has appointed herself Martha Stewart of Grief.
Yep.
Grief czar. Samantha's awkward. She even says, she doesn't even want to go to the funeral. She's like, do we have to go to that? She's very shut down. My favorite scene in the whole episode is when Miranda goes to get a bra at the store, and this sort of, can you describe that
Oh my
scene?
God. I've seen this a million times, and I watched it today and I was like crying. Miranda is in Philly. She didn't know her mother would die. And she needs a shitty black dress. And then she realizes she needs a shitty black bra to go with her shitty black dress. So she's looking for a bra. And this very pushy saleswoman, Lucille, who like Emmy for Lucille.
Yes.
Unbelievable character actress. Is like, does that thing that I think was also like really common around this time where everyone was like, your bra size is not what you think it is.
Yes, every time you went in Victoria's Secret,
with the tape measure, and they were like, you're not that, you're this. And Lucille basically is like, you're not a 36A, and like takes out her tape measure and basically starts puncturing Miranda's boundaries. And we've never met Miranda's mother.
Yes.
But we've met Miranda. And we can discern that Miranda doesn't like her boundaries being punctured, doesn't like people in her space. We get one line about her mom where it's like, she was awake long enough to veto my lipstick. And it kind of tells us everything we need to know. And so Miranda is like pissed at Lucille and kind of like tells her off. And then is in the dressing room, and Lucille, not taking a hint, opens the door, gets in there, is like manhandling, like hooking her bra. And that's, I guess, when Miranda kind of like yells at her, which is that's grief, right? You take your anger and your sadness out on complete strangers. My dad passed away when I was younger, and my mom always tells this story of being in the grocery store and just like going off on somebody at the parking lot and then being like, well, I don't know why I did that. Because they like took her shopping cart or something. You know what I mean? Like that's just, and Lucille takes it, and then Miranda basically is like, I'm so sorry, my mother just died. And Lucille immediately gets it and gives her a hug. And that's one thing we haven't seen Miranda get yet this episode in her grief, is a hug and feeling seen and held. And she lets Lucille hold her, and she looks at herself in the mirror. The bra fits really well. And she goes, well, this is perfect. You were right. And I think it's such a beautiful scene. And it shows you don't need layers and layers of backstory. You don't need flashbacks. You don't need the cold open to be young Miranda buying her first bra as a teenager, because you know this woman and you know what this loss meant to her and you know what she needs in that moment. And Lucille gives it to her.
It was such a beautiful scene, especially because throughout the episode, Miranda's sort of being very stoic, being very Miranda. Carrie offers several times, like, do you want me to come to the hospital? She's like, no, no. Her friends are trying to console her, and she's sort of being very pushing them away.
Yeah.
And so the fact that she's able to let her guard down in front of this stranger, I feel it just speaks volumes about her character. And, you know, it is relatable. Like, my mom passed away a few years ago. And thank you. And it's just, you don't know when it's going to strike you. And sometimes it can be easier to just unload on people that don't know you and have no preconceived notions of you. And you don't ever have to see it again.
The Lucille's of the world.
It's like you can just have a real moment with someone you'll never see again. And that can be more cathartic than talking to people that actually know you sometimes.
No, and Miranda famously doesn't really do that. That is a whole thing with Steve.
Yes.
It's kind of like the reason that they at first didn't work out was because she had this wall up and kind of was stoic and wouldn't let herself be super vulnerable with him. And I won't give any spoilers away, but that makes that moment at the end of the episode also land even harder.
Yeah. I love Steve.
I
was
Steve.
mad about And Just Like That, how they did my man Steve.
So dirty. They did Steve so dirty. I love Steve.
He's such a good man. Oh.
Is he your favorite? Who's your favorite?
Of all the men?
Yeah.
I would say Steve and Aiden.
Steve and Aiden.
I feel like they were the best ones. You know what? I wasn't mad at Baryshnikov, when he's
Alexander Petrovsky.
Yes, I was mad when they had him slap Carrie.
Yeah, that was.
I feel like they just forced that so Big could run in and save, because I feel like Baryshnikov, he was amazing. I feel like that's who Carrie should have had. Honestly,
I think that they had a conversation. There's another podcast had Sarah Jessica Parker on, Les Culturistas.
Oh, okay.
And Matt Rogers literally said, like, I think Carrie should have stayed in Paris.
Yes!
Because they're both pretty self-involved.
Yes.
And if they had a conversation where she's like, listen, I need to have a job if I'm here. And then she'd gotten, a job writing, I mean, it's easier said than done.
Learned French.
Or she wrote books. She could write books in Paris in English. And then they could have had this life where they were both like a little selfish and really rich.
Yes. I feel like, honestly, he was artsy. I feel like Big was just a more boring version of him. Because Big was just like finance bro.
Yeah. You never quite knew what he did.
Like, why is he so rich? I don't understand. At least I know why Alexander is rich. I feel like, honestly, like I said, I think they just made him villainous at the end on purpose so that Big could swoop in, but that didn't need to happen.
Again, because Big didn't need to have swooped in. Like, you can tell what feels shoehorned.
Yes.
Because we didn't need Big at the end.
No.
She should have, let's say she had that conversation with Petrovsky and then got on a plane and joined her friends at brunch and the series ended.
Yes.
And she walked down the street being like, who knows who's out there?
Bonjour.
Yeah. I would have been like, great, love it. I'm here. But instead, it had to be, she walks down the street and then Big calls.
Yeah. I mean, I did like that scene where he just was like, because it is all of our fantasy. We want
that's why
that
they did
guy
it.
that treats us like trash to wake up one day and realize we're the prize.
Carrie, you're the one. And that's why they did it. And I understand TV and they, at this point, it was a hit and they had audiences.
Yes.
They needed to satisfy it.
Honestly, the ending didn't make me mad. What made me mad was the movie. When you just undid all of that stuff. I'm like, you just had him make a grand gesture. He apologizes. He goes to France, for goodness sakes. Then he decides to leave her at the altar. I'm like, what?
Movie 2, he's like, let's have separate apartments.
Oh, yeah.
She can never fully get Big. And then he dies.
Yeah, I mean, that proves the point.
Yeah, seriously. The ultimate unavailable man. Dead.
That's so true, yeah. She should have been with the Russian.
Yeah. I agree.
So I love the scene where Aiden, buys Carrie a new laptop and a flash drive. And instead of being grateful, she is highly resentful. Now, as writers, I'm always told that action reveals character.
Mm-hmm.
How do you think Carrie's reaction to this shows what type of person she is?
I mean, it honestly, looking back at where their relationship ended up, they maybe should have broken up right then and there because he did something kind for her. You need a new laptop, babe. You need a new laptop and you need a hard drive. And she couldn't let him help her. She couldn't let him do something nice for her. She couldn't let him in. She had to pick it apart. It's blue. The laptop was blue. She found one, she couldn't find a problem with it. So she was like, it's very blue. And Aiden is the kind of person, that's his love language. He's an acts of service guy.
So good.
He's so good to her. And let's say she didn't like that laptop, or let's say she was waiting on her own. There's a way to say that to your partner, but she reacted very Carrie. She did not want him in. And that scene told us everything we needed to know.
Yeah, she has this wonderful line. I wrote it down. She says, if you start helping me, I get used to having help. What will happen when you're gone? And I think that is very relatable for a lot of women.
Yes.
I feel like when I was younger, I probably, self-sabotage people that were actually nice to me to go after the Mr. Bigs of the world. But I learned my lesson. Carrie, she don't.
And I think that it's interesting because it allows you, and I imagine this was happening in water coolers around the world in the early 2000s, to have a conversation about independence and like, what does it mean to be independent? And Carrie, I think, said something like, I've been doing this by myself for a long time. And that's great and wonderful. And just because someone is like holding your hand while you walk up the steepest hill doesn't mean that you can't walk. You know what I mean? And I think it's marrying independence and love. And she kind of couldn't see, I can be independent, I can be Carrie, and someone can like pick me up and help me when I need it. And that's, I think, why she ran to Big, because Big never really carried her up that mountain.
Exactly. It's like when you feel kind of low self-esteem or low self-worth, it's hard to accept people being kind to you. You think you have to bargain, or everything that I get is some piece of me I'm giving away, instead of just like I'm enough, and I deserve kindness, and I don't have to do anything for it.
100%.
Poor Carrie. In the final act of the show, we get, the funeral. I love Miranda's family is more concerned that she's single at the funeral rather than like
ignore the coffin. There's a single 35-year-old woman walking behind it.
Exactly.
Great line.
So all the gals are at the funeral. Samantha's still very uncomfortable when she says to Miranda, "You look great." Like that's all she could say. Everyone's sending her condolences.
Well, she does.
And Samantha also looked very good.
Oh, I mean...
it always makes me mad that Carrie was thought of as a style icon. I think Samantha's fits were serving much harder than Carrie.
Unbelievable. She really brought it.
Yes, she did. Justice for Samantha.
Justice for Samantha.
In many ways.
Truly. So true.
So Charlotte sort of fails at her Martha Stewart of grief task when the flowers arrive, and they're just very tacky.
Yes, and they're, I think, $500 worth of glitter, I think, is the line. It's because I remember the first time I watched it as like a very young, not very young, but like, teenager. And I was like, what's wrong with those? What's wrong?
Good.
Those are pretty. And then I was like, oh, they're tacky.
Yes, very tacky. And during the eulogy, the priest calls Miranda her brother's wife repeatedly.
Because the priest doesn't know what to do with a single woman that isn't connected to anybody, so keeps going, Jeff's wife, Miranda, Jeff's wife, Miranda.
And, I love the release in that scene where Samantha, finally is able to cry. And, she mouths, "I'm sorry" to Miranda, which is beautiful because she realizes, I don't know what's going on with Samantha, but she is having a block on her own feelings towards death and processing that. So when she's able to finally let down those walls... in her orgasm, I'm sure came.
I think that's what, because I was thinking about it too. I was like, I guess it's saying once this is a character that we have seen be very arm's length with emotion. She won't even let Smith hold her hand in later seasons.
That's true. Oh, that's also justice for Smith.
I love Smith. They're all so good besides Big. But so I think that when she heard about death, it's like her brain didn't know how to handle it. And so she tried to deal with it through sex, because that's what she does, but she couldn't, and that was losing her orgasm. And then when she cried, it's like, that's what you needed to do, babe. You needed to cry.
Yeah. She was looking for the wrong release.
Exactly. Exactly.
And you have this beautiful moment, where they're having the procession, the family's marching, and Carrie goes to join single Miranda and holds her. And similar to what you said at the beginning of when we were talking about this show, even though it's called Sex in the City and we see all these men they're dating, the heart of it is really the platonic love in the show. So Carrie being there for her friend is just a beautiful closing image.
And it's not selfish, and it's a non-villainy moment for Carrie.
She needed to redeem herself.
Yeah, well, and it's beautiful. It's and I think it also helps Carrie see it's okay to be needed. Or to need people and be needed. Both are okay. It's okay to need someone. She's looking at Miranda walking alone, and she's like, Miranda needs someone. Maybe I can let Aiden be that for me.
And then Steve and Aiden at the funeral, showing love.
I know. It's the only time we see Steve in the whole episode. We haven't even said his name. And just seeing him show up for Miranda is so special.
That's why.
Justice for Steve.
Justice for Steve.
Steve Smith. I mean, I love Harry, too.
Yes.
Harry Goldenblatt.
Oh, of course.
Yeah.
But even in Just Like That, he's the star.
Oh,
I feel like.
yeah. Absolutely. I can't wait for his spinoff.
Yes.
And yeah, it's. I think that what that moment does does so many things. It's like this beautiful moment between friends. It shows that just because you're single and 35 doesn't mean you're alone. It like solidifies the relationship between these two women, and I think it allows Carrie to be like, all right, let me try to let this guy in.
Yes, I agree wholeheartedly. So on that note, we can wrap up talking about these ladies. It was a gift talking to you.
Thank you for letting me do my favorite thing, gab about him.
Of course. Would you mind sticking around for a few questions about your career?
I would love to.
Stand by.
Welcome back to the show with our guest Ilana Peña, and thanks to our friends at Cafe Altura for sponsoring this segment. So, a little questions about you. I can't let you go without asking, are you a Carrie, a Charlotte, Samantha, a Miranda? Which are you?
I've given this a lot of thought. This is my answer. And I want to say I'm talking about the non-villainous parts of Carrie. I think I'm a Carrie Miranda blend.
Okay.
I think I'm the non-villainous parts of Carrie. The writer.
That's true.
She's the glue of her friend group.
That is true.
For
I
better
feel
or
like
worse.
none of them would be friends if Carrie was not their friend.
And that is like relatable. I feel like I'm the one starting the group text, and I relate to Carrie in that way. Obviously, observing the world around me and writing it. But Miranda's a boss. Miranda is like, there's, tote bags now that say we should all be Mirandas.
Yes.
And I wholeheartedly agree.
Yes, I too identify as a Miranda. I was watching the show, and as a kid, you hear people talking about it. I never watched it, but I felt like people would always be talking bad about Miranda, like, oh, she's so serious, she's such a sour puss, blah, blah. Watching the show, I'm like, Miranda's the only one that got her head on straight.
Yep.
She's trying to give Carrie financial advice about, investments, retirements. She had the right idea, and I too am a Miranda.
Yeah, Miranda is the one to be.
I agree with that. So, you are a feature writer and a TV writer. I feel like, that's more common now, but I'd say when I first started writing a few years ago, I was told, like, you have to write features or you have to write TV. How do you find writing both, and how do you balance writing both?
Yeah, I mean, I was told that as well. So I went in very much a TV writer. I only worked on TV shows as an assistant. I came up on Crazy Ex. I had a show on Disney Plus. And then I felt very lucky because, after that show on Disney Plus, I feel like people wanted to meet me, whether they were correct or not. But just having a show that was out there, I think, got my name out there a little bit. So I started having meetings for features and stuff. And it was something I really didn't know about. Like, I had taken classes and stuff in college and seen movies, but I was like, my on-the-ground training was really in TV. And then I like with most things in this industry and in life, I kind of just had to do it to learn how to do it. And I think the first real feature that I wrote after, I mean, there were a few I was working on at the same time, but I wrote with a friend. And that was really helpful because I'm used to writers' rooms. I'm used to bouncing ideas off each other. This was a Disney Plus movie based off a graphic novel. And I wrote it with my friend Haley Chavez, who worked on Crazy Ex with me and wrote on Diary.
Oh, cool.
So we were so used to working with each other. And she had actually written a feature before and I hadn't. And that was, I think, so helpful because while I had maybe working on Working Girl over here or doing a rewrite over there, I had this like mini writer's room for feature writing. And that, I think, honestly, is how I got good, is kind of being in spaces with people, learning, okay, character is character, story is story. It's longer.
Very long.
That was the first thing I kept saying. I was like, features are so long.
Agreed.
But I think having a partner to kind of help and shape one of my first scripts allowed me to have the confidence to do it on my own. And now I still kind of do that. Like I have some things I write on my own and I do it with TV too. I have some things I'm developing on my own and I have some I have with partners because it gets me out of my head and it gets me in that kind of writer's room space that I love. And that's, I think, a big way I balance it is doing it with other people.
I love that. I think just like you said, TV writing is collaborative, feature is very solitary. So if you can mix that together and make it an easier sort of transition, I think that's really helpful. So as you said, you were a showrunner of Diary of a Future President, great critically acclaimed show. So congrats on that.
Thank you.
And you were a writer on Crazy Ex, but were you like a lower level writer?
Yeah, so I started on Crazy Ex as a showrunner's assistant, season 2, and then I was writer's assistant with an episode, season 3, and then season 4 I was staffed. And I was very fortunate that my bosses on that show, Aline Brosh McKenna and Rachel Bloom, were excited that I was developing. There's a lot of staff writers a lot of times like aren't allowed to develop because the shows want to own them. But Aline and Rachel were like, they knew it was the last season of Crazy Ex and they knew that I was just starting my career. So they carved out development, or they allowed me to carve out Diary, which I was developing at the time. So I was a staff writer and I'd already written the pilot. So what I was doing while I was in the room is sometimes I would have to leave to go to an in-person pitch. Remember those?
Yeah, I've never had one.
I remember people were like, are they supportive? And I always tell this story. There was one day I took off my, whatever schlubby but still presentable writer's room clothes I was wearing and put on my pitch outfit. And I walked out. I think I was leaving the room an hour too early. And Aline Brosh McKenna, who wrote The Devil Wears Prada and also Devil Wears Prada 2, took one look at me and went, you need a necklace. And
very Miranda.
Truly. Priestley.
Yes, that
not Hobbs. And she called down, we were shooting on the lot. She called down to Costumes. Costumes sent up 4 necklaces.
That's so cool.
I modeled all of them. She was like, that one. And then I went to the pitch and it's not only was she supportive, she was actively rooting for me. And that is the biggest gift I could have gotten. Because it can be a very lonely pitching, especially your own thing, can be very lonely, and I was lucky to have them. I was lucky to have the collaborators at Gina's company and the showrunner that I had, and CBS Studios, and but yeah, I felt a little bit, now that I've done it for so many years since, I felt a little bit I didn't know what I was doing. I was just I go in this room and I do it was my first time pitching a show ever.
Oh, wow. And you sold it.
Yeah, it was 2018.
I know. Those
Remember
times
that?
are gone.
Yeah. It was when people wanted content.
Can you imagine? Yes. So when you sold your own show, because, you were a staff writer to going to selling your own show, being the showrunner, what was that transition like? And I guess if you could say one thing you wish you knew before you took on that job. The
transition was I had this repeating thought in my head that it like happened to me too early and I like didn't deserve it and that there was like a fluke in the system. But I didn't say that out loud because I was like, if I say that out loud, they'll take it away from me because I really want it. So I had this like constant push-pull in my head of like, well, this happened to me too early, but also I'm living my dream. And like, I should be a story editor, but also I'm living my dream. And to be clear, being a story editor was also my dream. So I was like, what is happening to me? And I think what that did, honestly, was it made it take a little bit for me to realize I could do it. Because I was just kind of like, well, this is how the industry goes, and there's no real template for young women, especially young Latina women, doing this. There's a lot of templates for young white guys doing this.
Oh, yeah.
And a lot of like, you know, guys out of Harvard who wear basketball shorts on set or whatever and are just like, I belong here. And because they think that they do. Or, you know, they make us believe they do. And I think it took me a while where I just was like, well, everybody here knows more than me. I was very... I mean, the term is imposter syndrome. I was just like, I felt like, what am I doing here? And then I slowly kind of would realize as we were breaking story, as we were building this character, that this is exactly where I needed to be. And the character was based on a version of me when I was 12 years old. And if you had told a 12-year-old me, okay, you're going to have a show on Disney, she would have been like, okay, great, amazing. Like, am I also on Broadway? But, you know, me in my late 20s was so scared. So a lot of it was getting back to that, honestly, the spirit of that 12-year-old self. And as I was writing this character that became a leader, I was learning to become a leader. And so much of learning to become a leader is believing you can do it and knowing what you want and being kind and gracious and surrounding yourself with good people. And if there's one thing that I could tell myself, it would be, girl, you got this. You're okay. You deserve to be here. Be open, be willing to learn, but don't be so scared that you don't do it.
I love that. So perfect note to end on from two Mirandas. We wish you success.
We wish you to be Mirandas.
Yes. Don't be a Carrie.
Don't be. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you. Thanks again to our guest, Ilana Peña, and to the writers of My Motherboard, myself, Julie Rottenberg, and Elisa Zaritsky. If you enjoyed this episode of the podcast, do us a favor. Follow, subscribe, like. You can watch the video on YouTube or listen on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. If you're interested in advertising with us, shoot us an email, podcast@inthecutla.org. Till next time, stay in the cut.